Hello everyone, this is Dr. Neelam Singh from ITS College of Pharmacy, and today we will discuss a topic micromeritics in physical pharmaceutics subject. So, today in this lecture we will discuss the introductory part of the micromeritics. First thing, what is micromeritics? What do you understand by micromeritics? Why we are studying micromeritics? So, micromeritics, when you fragment this term micromeritics, then it is micro and meritics. Meritics, that means study of the particles. Micron size range, that means study of micron size range particle is known as micromeritics. So, the science and technology of small particles is known as micromeritics. As in pharmaceutical dosage form and in pharmaceutical manufacturing, all the powder particles are in a range of a micrometer size range. That is why it is known as the micromeritics. The unit of particle size used most frequently in micromeritics is micrometer. Importance of study of micromeritics. Why we are studying micromeritics? So, first importance is the physical properties of powders such as bulk density, its compressibility are dependent on the particle size and particle size distribution. Now, what is particle size? What is particle size distribution? What is bulk density? What is compressibility? We will discuss further in this lecture. Second one, the rate of dissolution of poorly soluble drugs is directly related to the size of the drug particles. As we know, we can classify the drugs or a powder in the on the basis of their solubility: poorly soluble, sparingly soluble, highly soluble, freely soluble. So, in a case of a dissolution of a poorly soluble drugs, it is directly related to the powder particle size. The release characteristics of drugs from ointment, from creams, from suppository or any other type of a dosage form, either in a solid dosage form or a semi-solid dosage form, for example, even from the tablets, from the sustained release tablet or immediate release tablets. The release characteristics of drugs from ointments, creams, suppositories are dependent on the particle size of the dispersed drug or the drug which we have used for during the formulation of these dosage forms. Next one is the particle size of the dispersed drug also influences the spreadability of and performance of some cosmetic preparation like dusting powder. So, what is the meaning of spreadability of a dusting powder? Whenever you will sprinkle the dusting powder on your skin, how much area it will cover, that is known as the spreadability, and that is also dependent on the particle size. If there will the particle size will be a bigger particle size, then whenever you apply the such type of a dusting powder on a skin, it may give a gritty appearance and a scratchy feel. So, for the smooth appearance, for the smooth feel, the particle size monitoring should be done. Next, properties of drug such as rate of absorption and hence the pharmacological activity depends on the particle size. Rate of absorption and hence the pharmacological activity. Pharmacological activity, that means the therapeutic effect or therapeutic effect as activity of any dosage form depend on the absorption. Jitni drug absorb hogi, that amount will be give you the therapeutic effect. So, that absorption is also depends on the particle size. Next, the release characteristics of drugs from ointment, creams and suppositories are dependent on the particle size of the dispersed drugs. So, these are the advantages, these are the application, that is why we have to study the particle size and particle size analysis before going or before heading to the formulation part. Particle shape. As you see in the picture, particles may be spherical, may be rounded, may be angular, cubic, flaky, cylindrical and spongy. But as you see in this picture, among all these type of a particle, which is most commonly appeared particle as a spherical type of a particles. So, as we assume all the particles are spherical in nature, but the first image, this one, this is asymmetric particle. Why this is a symmetric particle? Because this do not have any type of a symmetry. You can't say this is a spherical or a rounded or a angular or a cubic or a flaky or a cylindrical or a spongy. No, it is asymmetric in shape. Asymmetric shape, that means this do not have any fixed symmetry, so that you can determine its diameter, its radius. So, in case of asymmetric particle, if the particle is spherical, then no issue, you can directly just measure the diameter or measure the radius, and you can determine the particle size. So, whatever the diameter, that will be the particle size. But if the particle is asymmetric in nature, how will you determine the diameter? How will you fix the diameter, exact diameter of that particle? So, in that case, if the particle is asymmetric in nature and most of the pharmaceutical powder or practically all the particles are asymmetric in nature. So, जब particle asymmetric है, if the particle is spherical, अगर कोई particle is spherical है तो you don't need to do anything, just you have to measure the diameter from the scale and that will be its diameter, that will be its particle size. But when the particle is asymmetric, then you have to go for the equivalent diameter. So, in this unit, in all the lecture, you will always find the word term, that is the equivalent diameter, equivalent volume diameter, equivalent surface area diameter, stroke diameter, projected diameter. These all are the equivalent diameter, and this equivalent term is used just because all the pharmaceutical powder are asymmetric in shape. पार्टिकल साइज, व्हाट इज पार्टिकल साइज? क्या होता है पार्टिकल का साइज? जो पार्टिकल का डायमीटर है वही पार्टिकल का साइज है. सो एनी कलेक्शन ऑफ पार्टिकल, बिफोर हेडिंग टुवर्ड्स पार्टिकल साइज एंड पार्टिकल साइज डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन डिटर्मिनेशन और पार्टिकल शेप स्टडी, first we have to understand two terms. One is the monodisperse, second one is the polydisperse. What do you understand by the term monodisperse and polydisperse? Mono, one, poly, बहुत सारे, so many. So, monodisperse, that means collection of particles of uniform size, and polydisperse is the collection of particles of varying size and shape. For example, what do you think practically, क्या ऐसा practically क्या ऐसा possible है कि all the particles are in a monodisperse in nature? For example, in a class of a 50 student, there is a class, and in the class there is a 50 student. So, would you think all the 50 students have a same age, same weight, or same color, or same marks in their previous classes? No, practically it is not possible. If it is not possible in a strength or in a number in 50, how it will be possible when you are going to you are talking about the formulation, when you are using the numbers of particles, thousands of particles are used for the single dosage form. So, monodisperse, that means when all the particles are of same size, that means in a class of 50 students, if all 50 students have a same age or all the 50 students have the same size, that means there is the same height, then we will say the monodisperse. But practically this is not possible. What happened? Practically the particles lie in the size range, just as for example in your class, all the students must lie in a age slab. That means might be all the students will lie in the range of 20 to 30 years. But you can't say all the students of 20 years, all the students are 25 years, or all the students are 30 years. There is a range. So, whenever there is a range in the particles, that is known as the polydisperse. When all the particles have the exact same size, that is known as the monodisperse. And practically all the particles are asymmetric in nature as well as polydisperse. Polydisperse, that means if I have 100 particles, so it might be 25 particles have a 1 micrometer size, 25 particles have 2 micrometer size, again 25 particles have 3 micrometer size, and again 25 particles have a 4 micrometer size. Then there will be size range how much? From starting from 1 to 4 micrometer. How many particles? 100 particles. So 25 particles, 25, 25, 25, 1 micrometer, 2 micrometer, 3 micrometer and 4 micrometer. So if you have 100 particles and 25 particles of 1 micrometer, again 25 of 2 micrometer, again 25 of 3 and 25 of 4, total number of particles will be 100. But there is a size range. They are not monodisperse. There is a size range of particle is 1 to 4 micrometer. So this is known as the polydisperse. If these all particles, all 100 particles will have a particle size 2 micrometer, exactly all the 100 particles will have a particle size 2 micrometer, that it is known as the monodisperse. This is known as the this is a polydisperse, and practically this monodisperse phase is very difficult. So all the particles are polydisperse. So this is known as the polydisperse. So in a case of a pharmaceutical powder, one thing that they are asymmetric in shape, and second one they are polydisperse in nature. So particle size is an important quality control tool in order to obtain powder with reproducible physical, chemical and pharmacological properties. For the particle size measurement, shape of the particle plays a significant role. Particle can be classified as spherical and irregular, and most of the particles or pharmaceutical particles are irregular or asymmetric in shape. So for a sphere or for a spherical particle, it is quite easy to determine the particle size, as you only read the diameter, you have to only determine the diameter. But unfortunately, pharmaceutical powders are irregular in shape and their surface area and volume changes with dimension. अगर कोई चीज़ spherical है तो उसका surface area fix है, उसका volume fix है, उसका diameter fix है, just because of the symmetry. But if the particle is asymmetric, particle ऐसा टेढ़ा मेढ़ा asymmetry है, then जिस surface से उसे देखोगे उसका surface area, उसका volume as per dimension change होता जाएगा, and this is happening with this pharmaceutical powders. So in case of the measurement of particle size of irregular particle, what will you do? To measure the diameter of irregular particle, we have to try to correlate some properties of irregular particles with spherical particles. That means some properties of irregular particles with the spherical particles. That means I can correlate with the surface area, we can correlate with its volume, we can correlate with its projected area. So these are the parameters through which we can correlate the irregular particle with the symmetrical particle. So properties of the irregular particle like surface area, volume, rate of sedimentation, projected area can be easily determined analytically, and we can correlate these properties of irregular particle with the symmetrical particle, and this term what we will get? They will get the equivalent diameter. So in this unit always you study, you always read that equivalent volume diameter, equivalent surface area diameter, equivalent projected area diameter. So why we are using equivalent? That because the particles are not in a symmetry, the particles are asymmetric in nature. अगर particle symmetric होते तो equivalent और average जैसा कोई term नहीं था. अगर पूरे के पूरे 100 particles exactly 2 micrometer के हैं तो उनका average भी 2 micrometer ही होगा. This will not be deviate. But अगर particles में polydisperse nature है, अगर particles are different sizes, so there is a one term we have to determine the equivalent diameter just because of the absence of the symmetry. You have to determine this polydisperse particles nature just because of the asymmetry in the particles. Now what is the surface diameter? See in the image, for example, this is your asymmetric particle, ऐसा टेढ़ा मेढ़ा irregular particle है, that's why it is known as asymmetric particle. We have to just find out the surface, यहाँ पर हम कह रहे हैं surface diameter, so we have to just find out the surface diameter, that means the surface area of this asymmetric particle by any analytical method. By this way, we will find out the surface area of this asymmetric particle is 0.21 centimeter square. Now, you have to find out the sphere having the exactly same surface area 0.21 centimeter square. So, this is the sphere which have the same surface area as per the irregular particle, that is 0.21 centimeter square. Now, this is a spherical particle. You have to determine the diameter or radius of this particle. In this way, you can determine the size of this asymmetric particle or a diameter of this asymmetric particle. So, this is known as the surface area diameter, और जो ये diameter होगा, that is known as the equivalent diameter. That is not exactly diameter, it's exact diameter. क्यों नहीं है exact diameter? एग्जैक्ट इसलिए नहीं है क्योंकि हमने किसी इसकी एक प्रॉपर्टी को, सपोज दैट यहाँ सरफेस एरिया की प्रॉपर्टी को लिया है, सरफेस एरिया एनालिटिकल मेथड से निकाला है, उसके बराबर का एक स्फीयर लिया है, उस स्फीयर का डायमीटर निकाला है और जो उस स्फीयर का डायमीटर है उसे ही हम कह रहे हैं ये इसका डायमीटर, तो दैट इज नोन एज द इक्विवेलेंट सरफेस एरिया डायमीटर. सो द डायमीटर ऑफ अ स्फीयर हैविंग द सेम सरफेस एरिया एज पर द asymmetric particle is known as the surface area diameter. Similarly, volume diameter, that means the diameter of the sphere having the same volume as per the asymmetric particle is known as the volume diameter. So, in case of a volume diameter, you will take the asymmetric particle, you determine the volume of asymmetric particle by any analytical method. Now, we have to draw a sphere having the same volume as per the symmetric particle. Now, determine the diameter of that spherical particles, and that diameter will be equivalent volume diameter of that irregular particle. So, यहाँ पर हम क्या करें, एक प्रॉपर्टी को कोरिलेट कर रहे हैं. यहाँ हमने वॉल्यूम को कोरिलेट किया, यहाँ पर हमने सरफेस एरिया को कोरिलेट किया. ये सब चीज़ें कोरिलेट इसलिए करनी पड़ रही हैं क्योंकि पार्टिकल एसिमेट्रिक हैं. अगर सिमेट्रिक होते तो दैट विल बी एग्जैक्ट थिंग, एग्जैक्ट डायमीटर, एग्जैक्ट सरफेस एरिया, एग्जैक्ट वॉल्यूम. बट हेयर because just because the absence of the symmetry, particles asymmetric हैं, डायमेंशन के साथ उनके जो मेजरमेंट है वो चेंज हो रहे हैं. दैट्स वाई वी आर यूजिंग सम स्पेसिफिक टर्म्स. सो फॉर एग्जांपल वी आर हेयर टेकिंग द वॉल्यूम एज अ रेफरेंस, हेयर वी आर टेकिंग द surface area as a reference. So, whenever you write down the equivalent diameter, it will always represent the constant value. For example, if you are writing here ds, d for diameter, s for the surface area. So, by this term we will know that is the ds is the surface area diameter. Here volume diameter is represented by dv, that means d is the diameter, v is the volume. So, dv and ds it will differentiate or distinguish by the term, that is it is taken by the reference is the volume, and here the reference is the surface area. Next equivalent diameter is the Stokes diameter. Stokes diameter of a sphere undergoing the same rate of sedimentation at the asymmetric particle. Asymmetric particle, when we are going to determine the rate of sedimentation, what is the rate of sedimentation? That means a free falling body. Whenever you disperse the particle in any dispersion system, the particle will settle down as per the time, just because of the presence of the gravitational force, and the gravitational force is proportional to the mass of the body. So, if the bigger particle will settle more frequently, more the speed of the rate of sedimentation or the rate of settling of the bigger particle will be more as compared to the smaller particle. So, in this way we can determine the Stokes diameter. Sieve diameter is the diameter of a sphere that will just pass through the same aperture size as per the particle. Projected diameter. Projected diameter is equivalent to surface area diameter. What happen whenever we see the image? For example, if you are observing a particle from the microscope, you are not directly watching that particle. What you are seeing, what you are observing, you are just observing the image of that particle through microscope. In that case, that surface area is known as the projected area. So, in that case, if you determine the particle diameter by counting the each and every particle through microscope, so that is known as the projected diameter. So, a sieve diameter, Stokes diameter, projected diameter we will study in detail in our next lectures. Martin diameter, Farad diameter. Martin diameter is the length of the line that bisect the asymmetric particle image, is known as the Martin diameter. Farad diameter is the distance between any two tangent of that asymmetric particle is known as the Farad diameter. So, if you observe Martin diameter, एक ऐसी लाइन जो इमेज को बाइसेक्ट करती है, दैट इज नोन एज द मार्टिन डायमीटर. किन्हीं दो टेंजेंट के बीच के डिस्टेंस को हम बोलते हैं फेरेट डायमीटर, और जो पार्टिकल है उसी की जो प्रोजेक्टेड इमेज आ रही है उसको बाइसेक्ट करने वाली लाइन को हम बोलते हैं प्रोजेक्टेड डायमीटर. सो इफ यू ऑब्जर्व अमंग दीज थ्री टाइप ऑफ डायमीटर, मार्टिन, फेरेट एंड प्रोजेक्टेड डायमीटर, सो मोस्ट रीजनेबल एंड मोस्ट you can appropriate diameter for the determination or more precise diameter for the determination of particle size is a projected diameter. So that's why via microscopic method we can determine either projected diameter or a Martin diameter or even a Farad diameter, but this projected diameter is much more closer to the this exact diameter. That's why we are observing or we are estimating the that projected area diameter. Particle size distribution. So, first thing, what is the difference between particle size and particle size distribution? Particle size distribution is a method of separation of a powder sample into different fraction based on their particle size. As you saw, this is the heap of the powder. This powder का एक heap has it's इकट्ठा किया हुआ है. This is the heap of the powder and we fragment this heap of the powder in three fragments. So, see x, y and z. You see in the x, y and z there is a different particle size. These particle size are big, there is small, there is smallest. So, in this heap of the powder, particle size distribution is different. Some particles are of x size range, some particles of y size range and some particles of the z size range. So, how they are distributed among the powder particle, this is known as the particle size distribution, and what is the diameter, what is the size, that is known as the particle size. So, particle size distribution, since collection of particle is a polydisperse, so it's become necessary to know not only average particle size but also the number of particles or how many number of the particles of the same size present in the sample. So, thus we need to estimate the particle size distribution, and particle size distribution is estimated by or is calculated by the frequency distribution curve. For the determination of particle size, there is the mathematical formulas to calculate the particle size, and for the estimation or for the analysis of the particle size distribution, we have to draw a plot, a graph between particle size and frequency. So, this is known, these are these frequency curves we will obtain by plotting the particle size from their frequency. And this frequency or particle size distribution is two type, one is a number distribution, second one is the weight distribution. So, see, in a particle size distribution, that means there are a particle size distribution may be is symmetrical, it may be asymmetrical. Symmetrical particle size distribution, suppose that we have 100 particles. Okay, in 100 particles, 50 particles of 2 micrometer, 40 particles of 3 micrometer and 10 particles of 1 micrometer. Similarly, again this is 100 particles. Here 40 particles of 2 micrometer, 40 particles of 3 micrometer and 20 particles of 1 micrometer. In these two distribution, this is there are total 100 particles and there are also total 100 particles, but the distribution of particles is different in both cases. How? Here the distribution 50, the frequency of 2 micrometer particle size is 50, the frequency of 3 micrometer particle size is 40, the frequency of 1 micrometer particles is 100, and again in here the same 100 particles, but the distribution 2 micrometer size range particle are 40, 3 micrometer 40 and 1 micrometer 20. Overall is 100, this is also 100, but the distribution of the particle is different. So, that is known as, this is known as the particle size distribution. Average particle size will be average of particle size of the 100 and यहाँ भी average particle size किसका होगा 100 particles का, but the particle size distribution is different in both cases. So, this particle size distribution we will determine through frequency distribution curve, and this frequency distribution curve again categorized in two types. One is the number distribution and second one is the weight distribution. So, here four types of frequency distribution curve we have to study. These type of frequency distribution curve we have to determine during the particle size analysis by the number distribution method as well as by the weight distribution method. So, normal distribution is usually not found in pharmaceutical powders due to uneven size reduction. The distribution of particles in the powder is asymmetric. So, these are the frequency distribution curves. In all type of a frequency distribution, there are majorly four types of frequency distribution curve. In all type of a frequency distribution curve, always we have to plot a particle size in x axis, and in a y axis we have to plot the frequency, either percentage frequency or a cumulative frequency. So, these are four type of frequency distribution curve. As you see in the first picture, in this image, this is a symmetrical powder particle size distribution. This is a symmetrical powder particle size distribution. So, these are four types of a frequency distribution curves. Number and weight distribution. Number distribution can be converted into the weight distribution, and how weight of the powder equivalent to n d to the power 3 or d to cube. What is the number distribution and what is the weight distribution? When you analyze the powder by counting so one by one particle, for example, doing microscopy, what do you do in a microscopy? In a microscopy, just we sprinkle the powder in the glass slide or the wet slide or dry slide, or put the cover slip and analyze the particle in a microscope. How will you analyze? And each and every particle, you just move the slide in a stage of that microscope and analyze each and every particle. So, this is known as the number analysis or a number distribution. But in the second way, if you just go and weigh the powder and then sieve the powder or screen the powder through the mesh aperture size through the sieve, so that is known as the weight distribution. So, same powder particle may be analyzed by the number distribution method as well as the weight distribution. Weight distribution मतलब जब आप सबको इकट्ठा करके weigh कर ले रहे हो. Number distribution जब आप उसी weight में अगर 100 particle हैं तो एक particle को आप weigh कर रहे हो. So, number distribution is a more precise method as compared to the weight distribution method. What is the particle number? Number of particles present per unit weight is known as the particle number. Per unit weight, that means 1 gram. The formula for the determination of particle number is n is equal to 6 divided by pi into d cube rho, where the rho is the density of the particle and pi is the fixed value, d is the diameter. Shape factor. What is the shape? So, as you know, if the particle is spherical, that is the symmetric perfect powder particle, but all the particles are practically, it is not possible to get all the particles in this perfectly spherical shape. So, particles are in asymmetrical shape. So, how will you determine the asymmetry in particles? For that, the term introduced, that is known as the shape factor. How will you determine the shape factor of a particle? There is a 2 diameter we have to calculate for that. The sphericity defined by as dV upon ds square. dV volume diameter, ds surface area diameter. So, when we divide the volume diameter of the asymmetric particle with the surface area diameter of that asymmetric particle under the square root, then you will get the sphericity. If this value is come 6, then 6 is the perfectly spherical particle, and if it goes beyond the 6 or less than 6, then there is asymmetry in the particles. So, if this on the basis of shape factor, if we have a powder particle have a shape factor 6, that means it is perfectly spherical particle, no need to go for the equivalent diameter, no need to go for the particle size distribution, because all the particles are exactly same size, that are the monodisperse in nature. But if there is a symmetry in a particle, so you have to determine the equivalent diameter, equivalent surface area diameter, all the equivalent diameters you have to determine. So, for that, this is one criteria to know the sphericity or asymmetry in the particle is the shape factor. So, asymmetry in a particle increases as well as the shape factor increases, and for the perfect spherical particle shape, the shape factor should be 6. Thank you.